Okay, and we are live. Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome. This is a first workshop series about Hyperledger Bevel. Is a series of workshops designed to help you learn about blockchain technology. As I mentioned, particularly Hyperledger Bevel. Hyperledger Bevel is an accelerator by which developers can consistently deploy production-ready distributed networks across public and private clouds providers. Let me introduce our speaker today is Sownak. He's a technical architect at Accenture and technical architect and maintainer of Hyperledger Bevel. Thank you, everyone, to join this session and please enjoy and learn. And Sownak, could you start, please?
Yeah, hello. Hi, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on from where you are joining. I hope my screen is visible. This is not, I mean, I got a question. Is this the first session for Hyperledger Bevel? So this is not the first session for Hyperledger Bevel. We have been doing a lot of sessions. We have code walkthrough sessions and demo sessions as well. This is the first of this workshop series, which is, we have 2 more next week. And so, yeah, as Igor just mentioned, Hyperledger Bevel is an accelerator. It is not a blockchain platform in itself. It is an accelerator using which you can deploy blockchain platforms or DLT networks in a much lesser time. And also it involves production ready systems as well, so you don't have to re-architecture your solution or the for a separate for a production system. We have most of the production things embedded in Bevel, of course, like any other production system which involves blockchain or non-blockchain. You will still have to do all the other security assessments and all that, which is not covered as part of Bevel. Okay, so with that, I'll start with the this is our antitrust policy notice. We don't have, I'm not going to read it. It's there. You can read it, and it will be there for the video as well. And I'll wait for some time in case someone is reading in the videos. So Hyperledger Bevel, so this is the first session. We have 2 more next week. So the first session is going to be setting up of a Kubernetes cluster. I mean, this is a generic session for Kubernetes cluster, and I know it has nothing to do with Hyperledger as such. Kubernetes is a different and platform altogether. But why we are doing it is because when we did earlier workshops, we found that most people do not know about Kubernetes, and they struggle to start the Kubernetes cluster itself. Of course, many of you here will be experts in Kubernetes, and in that case, this session is not for you. But also, we are not going to answer any details of various details of Kubernetes, because you'll have very good courses online about that. So we are going to set up the cluster so that we can use Bevel on it in that scenario. So that's the summary on that. For today's session, it's about 1 hour session in total. So we'll see how far we get. It is an hands-on session, so if you will be doing yourselves as well, as I will try to do myself as well. If we get to, it should be possible to create a cluster within an hour, because we will be using managed services. But if someone is stuck because you don't have a cloud account or some other problem, then you can do it yourself later as well. The next session will be setting up Vault. HashiCorp Vault is an important component for Hyperledger Bevel, because it stores all the secrets and the keys and the public keys and private keys in Vault. So that is important. And so next session, the second session will be on how to set up HashiCorp Vault, and then the last session will be how to set up a DLT platform using Bevel. And the last session is a longer session. Right. Any questions so far? Or if not, I have this question about what is a Kubernetes cluster. If anyone can just give a brief for someone who doesn't know about Kubernetes. You can type in the chat. So the question is, what is a Kubernetes cluster? That's the question from my side. Of course, if anyone has questions, also we can talk. Oh, I think there is a question from Jose. Can we take these setup as production ready one? So this is, I wouldn't suggest you to take this setup directly to production, because as I said, for doing a production solution, you will have to deal with other security, mainly security considerations as well. Yeah, it is not a production. This one is not a fully production. It can be used as a high level development environment, but not for a production system. Yeah, I think answers are more or less right. So someone said about cloud native orchestration platform. So no, it is not a cloud native, because you can run Kubernetes on bare metal as well. So it is not a cloud native solution. It is an orchestration framework for containerized platform that is best one and organized. So it is, yeah, I would say it is more like a management platform for containerized assets, yeah, which all the images and all that is much easy to orchestrate using Kubernetes. I will compare than using, say, Docker, Compose, or anything else. So because Kubernetes does a lot of the memory management, CPU management itself. And yeah, and on top of that, we are going to use a managed Kubernetes in this session. So that managed means one which is provided by cloud and by a cloud service provider. And that is why these are the two prerequisites for this session. You should already, I think Igor sent that email, you should already have a cloud account, preferably GCP, because I'll be doing it on GCP. Or if any others, of course, they should support a managed Kubernetes, and you should have a laptop desktop, of course, from which you are connecting, and you'll be using the cloud console. So those are the two prerequisites. And so no further questions, I hope. Okay. Right, so let's get on. I hope everyone has their cloud accounts. I will paste this link on the chat as well. Sorry, I'll have to end the show and copy. So this is the one that will follow today. Okay, so there is a question. Can you elaborate on Indie and some other terminology? Is it different than Bevel? Yes, I think in that case, you can look at the Hyperledger umbrella. Because this session is not for that, but if you look at Hyperledger, the main website on Hyperledger Foundation, you'll have the greenhouse in which the Bevel is a tool and Indie is a DLT platform. So that's the main difference between Indie and Bevel. So from the DLT platforms point of view, under Hyperledger, you have Hyperledger Indie, Hyperledger Besu, Hyperledger Sawtooth, Hyperledger Fabric is the most popular one, and others I of course. And non-Hyperledger are, for example, GoQuorum or R3 Corda. Those are non Hyperledger DLT platforms. And then Bevel is a tool, Hyperledger Bevel, which is used to deploy these DLT platforms. That means Hyperledger Bevel can be used to deploy a Fabric network or a Quorum network or a Besu network or a Corda network or a ND network. So those are the 5 I would say are supported right now by Hyperledger Bevel. Okay, so I mean, this is we'll start now. Before that, any questions? If you are doing hands-on, please say yes. Yeah, if you're not doing hands-on, you can just look at this, but I would suggest that would be quite boring. Right. Okay. So there's another question. Does any cloud provider enable Kubernetes cluster for free? If not, which is providing minimum cost? So so that's why we are choosing GCP. So GCP, as far as I know, it is not free. But when you can everyone else go on mute, please? So for GCP, it is not free, but the GCP, when for a new account, you get $300 credit, and Kubernetes is included in that $300 credit, because GCP Google doesn't charge separately for the Kubernetes cluster management itself, whereas AWS charges for the Kubernetes cluster. So and it will not be in the AWS free tier. So I hope you have accessed the link by now and been to your console. Right. And so let's do the next thing. You can create a new project ideally, or you should already have a project. Just select the correct project from the top. So I'll show you here. It's here, you select projects here. I know this spelling is wrong, but this is how the project was created. So that's how I have. So this is my my project, and then okay, I'll have to go it here. So the next one is yeah. So on your local machine, you should be installing kubectl and gcloud SDK. So I think I already have it on mine. So kubectl. So I think I have kubectl, otherwise it would have given an error. Yep, and then I have gcloud as well. Yeah, so I have gcloud. So please install kubectl and gcloud SDK, which you will have the access, which we'll be using as mainly the clients. Right, then the next step is to create a service account, and that's what I was there. You can create the service account. So we'll start. Okay, so I've created the service account as per the details, as per the guide there, and then I am going to create a key for that. And the key will be downloaded in my system. Okay, now the next, so that's the service account, and that's the service account you should be using to connect. I mean, if you already have like a super user service account, and you can use that as well. There's no, but this is kind of an extra layer of security that you use this specific service account and then set the Google credentials to this JSON file, so that whenever you access the Kubernetes cluster, you'll be using this. Right, then next is Kubernetes. Let me search here. Yeah, so Kubernetes engine, it should be enabled already. If not, you can you have to enable. For me, it is enabled on Google Kubernetes engine because I've used it already. And then I'll click create. And I'll use GK standard. I know autopilot looks a bit more enticing, but yeah, it will give problems later, I guess. So you can do GK standard, and that's what it says here as well. Right. So let's give this a name. As you can read in the document that if you are using for production like situations, you should use regional, but otherwise zonal is fine. You can specify the node locations as well. So I'll say, yeah, I think this is fine. Then I'll add two more locations. Release channel is, I think you can just do default or stable, because I think this is where you're selecting the version of Kubernetes. Bevel kind of currently for all supports 1.19 only, so it may it doesn't appear here, which is fine, because for this one will be using 1.21. The only problem with 1.21 at that some point we'll have there will be some problems with the vault and all. We'll fix that maybe during the workshop. But for now, yeah, choose a stable channel and choose, for now, let's choose the lowest, which is 1.21. So we have to do the whole thing. Okay, so next is default pool. You can keep the name as default pool itself. You can change. I'm not enabling all these auto scaling and all that now, because you can change these later. It's not anything that you cannot change later. So the only thing you may want to do is change the node in your default pool. If you want, you can choose a higher memory or higher CPU, but remember that these is for each instance type. So if you're using your $300, it may be costly to choose a higher one. Because we have already chosen three nodes, so there will be that means you will have 3 E2 medium VMs spun up. And just for everyone, again for everyone, if you're not working always, what you can do is come and make this node I'll show you again, but this number of nodes per zone to 0 as well before you close your, so that it is not billed to your account. when you're not using it, and then once you come back tomorrow or whenever you are doing it, you can come back and change this number of nodes to say 3. It is actually 3 per zone, which is quite high. It will create 9, so I'll change it to 1. So yeah, change it to 1 per zone, and then it will take some time to come up with the new VMs, but rest you'll save on the costs. Okay. So coming back to the nodes, I think the boot disk size doesn't have to be 100 GB, because we'll hardly use anything on the for Bevel at least. We'll hardly use anything from the default boot disk, because Bevel will create PVCs always for any of the new deployments that we'll be doing. PVCs are persistent volume claims, so they are separate volumes that are created for on GCP. So which don't take this boot disk space. So I'm just reduced it best for. Okay. Okay, networking, there is some issue, so I don't think I'll have to create a network, I guess. Anyway, let's go one by one. Security, compute engine service account is fine. Allowing default access is also fine. Okay, metadata. Yeah, I mean, if you want to add any key, what should I say, tags, it is like, this is how you do. So you can add anything, any tags. You can add Kubernetes labels. You can add node tents and all that here. Okay. Next, automation. Yeah. So this is. This is automation. So I think what I am having an issue is there is no default network. So maybe I'll have to create a network first. Okay, so there's a question: what challenges would one face with Bevel setup if not using a managed Kubernetes service? So the challenges that you will face is not with the Bevel setup; it is with the setting up your managed Kubernetes service itself. So because if you are not using your Kubernetes service itself, so if you're not using managed Kubernetes, then you will have to maintain those nodes. You have to ensure that you have enough number of CPU yourself, because otherwise Kubernetes will just stop scheduling automatically. You will not have any automatic, you may need to write those rules yourself to automatic scaling up or scaling down rules, and all the complexity that comes with it. And you will have to manage a separate Kubernetes master node, and separate you to manage the etcd, the Kubernetes directories, and then the Kubernetes master data and all that yourself, and ensure that they are backed up so that you can get back to, if something crashes, you can get back again with the same state. So all that is not, all those extra effort is not needed if you're using managed Kubernetes servers. Okay, so Yeah, we'll see what is going on. So you can choose a private or public, cluster. Private cluster is public cluster is of course your cluster itself. It's written here that the roots are automatically created. You have to you cannot change the setting after the cluster is created, but private cluster is where you have an internal IP for the nodes, and you can access the control plane using an external IP address, which I'm selecting now. You can also select enable control plane global access. So to which what will it means is that it will create you will be able to access the control from everywhere. Otherwise, you can just give the IP range. So let's do. Let's open that. So I'm doing this because we are going to access it for all. Otherwise, from everywhere, because otherwise it is going to be. You can create like any VPN address or a specific IP address where you are able to connect to the control plane from. So that's the option here. Okay, did have a question, any recommendation minimum hardware to install Hyperledger Bevel? So not sure who is asking that question, is coming as iPhone 2. But Hyperledger Bevel is not in itself a deployment, is not an installation in itself. Of course, to run Hyperledger Bevel, you will need a machine because it's an operations tool. So that we mostly recommend using Ubuntu which is able to run Ansible. So that means it should have 8 GB of RAM at least. And then what Hyperledger Bevel does is deploying a DLT network. Now for the DLT network itself, you will of course need hardware or be it cloud or bare metal. But that hardware will be of course dependent on your DLT network configuration. If it has 2 nodes, it will be less hardware, and if it has 100 nodes, it will be much more hardware. And the question is about Minikube or Kind. So we have not I mean, we did try using Minikube earlier, but most of the time it didn't work because we were spending a lot of time to fix issues related to Minikube itself and the networking aspects, as you may have seen in the Discord chats. Going there. So we have not tried any of those Minikube. We used Minikube, I think at least two years ago or 3 years ago, and after that it will not. So I'm not sure what is K3S. So I don't know if it will work on K3S. Yeah, we have not tried on any of these Minikube, Kind, or MicroKTs, though we use Kind for doing our tests, which is in when we do testing for using molecule, we use Kind there, but that's only for running the Ansible tests. We have not used for that, because Bevel is targeted for production like or production ready systems, and hence we don't spend a lot of time in trying to make Bevel work for Minikube or MicroKTs, because no one is going to use Minikube or MicroKTs in a production system. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, for if it is running, then for this session, that's the thing. We'll try to, of course, connect to this, and to get that connected, you can, as I said, you can use download download kubectl, or I'll give you another resource. Or you can download for a UI based, if you like UIs, then this Kubernetes Lens is a very good tool, which we use in as well, which will be, you will see UI, and it's much more, you don't have to remember all the kubectl commands. Basically it's an abstraction on the kubectl command, so you can use this KTS. I think they have changed a little bit long, like you have to register now with GitHub and all that, but it is still a good tool to use. Yes, and the question is about using WSL as a controller when setting up the prerequisites. Yes, you can use WSL as a controller when setting up prerequisites. I think for the next, basically for the final session, or whenever you're running kubectl and all, we can use WSL, because most of our commands, not all of our commands are Unix based commands. We work mainly on Unix machines. All our Ansible controllers, or the machine that we work from, is Unix, or Linux or Ubuntu, and so it is good to have WSL. The other advantage, of course, is you can run Docker, because we have a Docker image. When we'll go to the third session, I will know that we have a Docker image which you can use as the Ansible controller. And as we know that Docker doesn't run natively on Windows. So anyway, you will need a WSL, some format of Windows machine, Ubuntu instance to run Docker on Windows. So in which case you can run it from WSL as well. Yeah. So that's, hopefully it's starting up. So we'll take some time, I guess, but in the meantime, is there any other question? Is anyone stuck at somewhere? Or if they are using, they want to see the same process on AWS, we can do that. We have not used SUSE or OpenSUSE Linux as the operating system, so I don't think most of the commands will work. So for that, I think in that case, let me see if I can. Right. So in that case, Igor, can you send the presenter join to Subhajit Sarkar?
Sorry, could you repeat?
Subhajit is Suvajit.
Hi everyone, Shivajit here. I've just put my name there. So Igor, you can add me.
So do you want me as a co-host?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So because then he will be doing using EKS, sorry, for AWS EKS using EKS CTL. Question from Anand, any dependencies on storage class as those may be cloud specific? Yes, there is definitely dependencies on storage class as they are cloud specific. And as a result, we have created storage class templates in Bevel for the cloud platforms that we have tested on, which includes AWS, Azure, Google. I think there's some from was a DigitalOcean as well. And many people have contributed additional storage class templates for a new or different cloud platforms as well. Right, okay, Subhajit, over to you.
Right, let me see if I can share the screen now.
So determining power usage, I guess that will be from your cloud provider because we're using managed Kubernetes. To Stephen.
Right, is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, so I followed the same steps as in to create the Kubernetes cluster, but the cloud provider that I have chosen is AWS, and to do that, what I found the best way is to use the EKS-CTL library. So some of the prerequisite to get that started is, of course, the AWS cloud subscriptions and cloud account. And then a couple of binaries are required. For example, the AWS CLI and which will configure your AWS credentials. You would also need AWS IAM authenticator. And then the EKS-CTL is, of course, the client that is required to bootstrap the Kubernetes cluster. Now, I'll put some links quickly. Maybe later on, you can just have a look or just maybe search for EKS-CTL. So this one will give you all the steps of how to install on various machines. For now, I have just used the installation step for Linux machines here. And
can you paste it to on the chat?
Yep.
The EKS-CTL link. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And it has a lot of configurations on how you exactly want your cluster configurations to be. For example, the region, specific region where you want, the name of the cluster, the number of nodes that you want. You can have the auto scaling groups configured as well. This will also let you configure any SSH connection that you want on your Kubernetes nodes, basically the worker nodes. So all those setups are there, but if you want to just simply run in a base mode, you can just have the cluster name, the number of nodes, and the kubeconfig file. Basically, this is the local path where you want your kubeconfig kubeconfig YAML to be auto-created, so that later you can use it to access your cluster using kubectl client. Right, and just kind of couple of things in the user which you have authenticated with AWS. So the policies that are required are basically, if the admin access there, that's always useful. But then in terms of for the EKS creation part, you definitely need the EKS cluster policy, the EKS service policy, and the EKS CNI policy. The EKS worker node policy is also something required if you want to kind of access the worker node pool. So once you have this policy added to AIM, you can simply run the command here. So I've already done it and looks like the cluster is ready. So I'll just kind of confirm that with I'll just check if the file has created properly or not. So if I do ls here, I do see, 1 second. It's in Bevel HLM.yaml. Didn't create there, but I'll confirm.
It should be in .cube. Oh, is it not there?
Yep, for some reason it didn't create. Did I not put the correctly? It's that only.
And you can
That's
still get
strange.
it again using the EKS command.
Yep, I'll have to check that.
Yeah, cluster credentials.
This one is to write it to that path, but then
Yeah, this one, the last one. EKS utils write queue config.
yeah. This one and cluster name is. I have to give the path as well now. Just have.
Okay, while you're at it, what was the question there? What is the roadmap for Hyperledger? As I can see, many projects are in graduated state and incubating as well. Are all these projects different among each other in terms of functionality? Which framework shall we learn? If Indie, Bevel, etc. I mean, to answer that, I don't know if David, you want to take that, or Igor, or otherwise I can answer that as well.
Sorry, could you repeat?
So the question is, what is the roadmap for Hyperledger? As I can see, many projects are in graduated state and incubating as well. Are all these projects different among each other in terms of functionality? Which framework shall we learn?
Okay. That's a good question, but obviously I cannot answer at this moment. So it will be the best, like, join Discord and like.
Yeah, so I mean, I will give you from my point of view, of course, I'm not a member of Hyperledger TSC, but Hyperledger is a foundation, and it's, as we know, as it's called Hyperledger Foundation. Hyperledger is not a blockchain platform. So Hyperledger is a foundation, and under that foundation, you have many projects which are blockchain related. Most of them, almost all of them, and as I discussed previously as well, you have a few under the umbrella. You have a few DLT platforms, you have some tool sets, you have some integration, interoperability tools, platforms as well. So all these are separate projects under Hyperledger. So you may, if you in your business area, if you have to learn all of the projects, you will have to learn all of the projects, but yeah, generally people choose one or two of the related ones, like especially for example, you're using Fabric, you will learn mainly on Fabric. If you're using Indie, then of course you have a bit more to learn because you have Aries framework as well. Then if you're using Besu, then again it is simple enough. You just try to understand Besu. Then this other question is there some kind of checklist or documentation regarding security considerations to take into account to deploy production ready Bevel network? The answer to that is no, because every client, every implementation is different and everyone will have their own security considerations. The general security considerations for any deployment will apply to that client, a specific client. They should already have security considerations for running any production network and not just a blockchain production network. So the summary of that is that there is no different additional security because you are using a Bevel or because you are using a blockchain platform. The security will be same. The security profiles or the requirements will be same as any production project.
Yeah, quickly on that part. I think the kubeconfig file got written into the default kubeconfig path that I had set. So that's there. So I've just kind of exported that as a variable kubeconfig, and then with kubectl, I can see the pods there, and I can see the get node. So it should show me the one node that I had created, and the version as well. So by default, it's 1.22, I believe. Yeah, 1.22.
Okay. So anyone who's working on, who is in progress along with the session, their cluster has come up because mine hasn't, is still going under. Health checks. Yeah, I think Shubhaji said it takes about 15 minutes on AWS.
Yep.
So I think it takes a bit more for GCP.
Sownak, do you want me to kind of have this loaded on Lens as well? Maybe it will be.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, so I'll just stop sharing. I need to copy the kubeconfig file and then share back again.
What are some best practices to follow while creating Hyperledger Fabric production network via Bevel? The answer, yeah. So I think there should be a kind of, we should publish a white paper or something because it will be quite big set of best practices. I've already said something about the security. The other thing that we have seen, and we are of course learning, and people, whoever is using Bevel are also coming up with the questions. So for example, there is the first best practice, of course, is not to use Fabric certificate authority. You should use your own separate certificate authority. And even if you use Fabric certificate authority, you should have the certificate renewal and revoking all those mechanisms, or what should I say, processes in place before using the Fabric certificate of Fabric CA servers. So I think that would be the major thing that I can talk about. And the rest, everything is similar. Like you should have a secure development environment, secure operations environment. Ensure everything is TLS3 encoded. The Fabric network itself, of course, will be secure because it is communicating via secure channels. But then the accessing, like as you saw, showed you the Kubernetes cluster. You should have more tighter restrictions around accessing the Kubernetes cluster, because if someone has access to the Kubernetes cluster, they can install something else or delete something. So those are generic best practices for any cloud development, I would say. Yeah, I think Shubhajit can show the final output.
Right. So I have the lens installed in my local system, so I need to copy the kubeconfig files. I've copied it here, and from lens tool, I will just add a new cluster and then provide the path of the kubeconfig file, select the correct context, and then can, I believe, add cluster. So, okay. So I think I need to apply the authenticator. 1 second, I'll add that as well.
Okay, any other questions? I mean, Jorel had the question that what is the final look at the config file? I mean, it will be just like any other kubeconfig file, I would say, which has a single entry. And as Shubhajit was mentioning, like if you don't update your kubeconfig environment variable, it will keep on adding new configurations to the existing file, in which case your kubeconfig will kubeconfig file will become very huge, and then you have to change the context to update everything. But ideally your Kubernetes class config file should contain only one context and details of one cluster, and that's what you will be using in the third session. So every time you run a kuber to get a update config command or the gcloud command, you should be using a new file, set it as kubeconfig equals to, which Shubhaji just showed, and if and then it will update into a new file. So the last question was, Bevel support certificate renewal feature in Fabric. So Bevel right now doesn't support certificate renewal feature in Fabric. It is in progress, as you may have seen in our issues board. And it is not being developed by Accenture at the moment because it is not our priority. For the reason that we do not suggest clients to use Fabric CA as a production CA. Right, I think that's all, unless there are any questions. Were there any questions on YouTube? Let me see.
No question on YouTube.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please join us for the next 2 sessions, and then next week, 14 June and 16 June. I put a link on the chat. Thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, and just
so
on a kind of a show of hands or something, like how many of your Google cluster or AWS cluster was up and running? Because we'll be needing that for the next session. So for the next session, which we are deploying Vault, you should already have a running Kubernetes cluster. Okay.
I put also link to YouTube recording of the session, so please you can use it and go through once again.
Okay, thank you everyone, and have a good day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much. Thank you, Suvik.
Thank you all.